session with the Vice President of Nigeria, Yemi Osinbajo. We're going to start with an indication, sir, of where the Nigerian economy is right now, given the fact that we are striving for inclusive growth, and that's not just an African agenda, it's a global agenda. So let me hand it to you. Just give us a synopsis of where we are right now.
Okay. First, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for coming. I want to say first, I'm sure that most of us already know the background to where we are in Nigeria and why where we are. I think the most important narrative today is what our plans are to get out of the recession. We have a Nigeria Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which is a 4-year medium-term plan, which first addresses the question of getting us out of the recession, and then, of course, how to go on the path of sustainable growth. The most important aspects of that plan are, macroeconomic stability, diversification of our economy, and a very robust social investment scheme. Now, just to go from the social investment scheme, because that speaks to the question of inclusion. The social investment scheme is peculiar in the sense that it's not a social safety net in the traditional way. This is one where we are actually looking to develop capacity, especially in the young people. So a lot of the investment actually goes into the development of capacity at the level of very, very young people. So we have a scheme which is called Empower. 500,000 young graduates are being engaged, they're being employed. It's a volunteer core program. But they are being engaged to be teachers in primary schools, to be public health officials, as well as extension workers for the farms. But more importantly is the training that goes with that. Each of them will be trained, each of them will be armed with a device which enables them to be trained in a wide variety of areas, especially technology training, even writing codes, and training on an ongoing basis and improving their capacity.
Mr. Vice President, yes. Key to that social development plan will
yes.
be macroeconomic stability, as you mentioned, and also diversification of the economy. Let's talk a bit about the macroeconomic stability, because at the moment investors are a little concerned. They're excited, though, because the opportunity of 180 million plus consumers in Nigeria is incredibly appealing to anybody wanting to make money in a low-growth environment.
Yes.
So where can you assure investors that this economic growth and recovery plan is going to lead to macroeconomic stability?
Absolutely. And I think that most investors in Nigeria, most who see the investment climate in Nigeria, are actually quite bullish. And I believe that many of them see what the immediate prospects are. If you look at the macroeconomic environment, and one of the reasons why in our earlier discussion this morning, I was pointing out that once you understand why you are where you are, and for investors, they're smart. They understand it. I mean, it's not a structural problem, as someone pointed out. For instance, look at foreign exchange availability. It's a supply issue. We know why we don't have as much foreign exchange as we ought to have. And a lot of that has to do with the problems of oil production, which was, of course, affected by the insurgency in the Niger Delta and all of that. We're resolving that. Once that is resolved, obviously more dollars come into the market. When we have more dollars, those who are looking to import are able to import even more. Now, but just going beyond that, also affecting the policy, our foreign exchange policy, which we have, and carrying that policy to its logical conclusion, ensuring that it enables supply from the market as opposed to supply from government.
Is there not a short-term solution on the forex problems that you are experiencing? Because I would disagree slightly in that I do believe there are many investors out there who are concerned about the forex situation. I mean, the bottom line is investors want to be able to deploy their money, make money, and then be able to get their money in and out of an economy.
Yes.
And I think that they are, at the moment, a little concerned that they are with the forex supply situation. So is there not a short-term scenario that you can help businesses in this environment?
Let me again, just as I said, it's a supply issue. And the only way to deal with the supply issue is to supply the dollars. I mean, there's no other way. ensuring that the dollars come. And the dollars will come from our oil export, which is 94% of foreign exchange earnings, as well as a robust foreign exchange market. And that's why I'm saying implementing our foreign exchange policy, which would allow more dollars to come into the economy. The only way that people will be assured of as they bring in their dollars, the dollars will be able to go out is that market, is ensuring that the market is available. That market is a dollar market, requires dollars, a foreign exchange market. And those are the issues that we're addressing. Well, and one of the reasons why we're very confident that, there are two issues. If you look at the average investor in Nigeria, investors in oil and gas, for instance, so they make their own dollars. The large investors in oil and gas. They're investors. For example, look at cement, which is a big, opportunity, which is a big industrial activity in Nigeria. They also make dollars from export and all of that. Now, there are those who are manufacturing, but they are importing 85% and over. Now, that's a slightly more difficult problem, And where you have that kind of large importation, you obviously are going to have problems unless you invest locally. And that's why we're also trying to direct attention to local investment. People simply have to invest locally. We're investing $50 billion in export processing zones this year alone. Those export processing zones are supposed to create an opportunity for investors to invest locally and draw from local resources. So this is an opportunity for the investor. It's okay if the investors.
I don't want to dwell on foreign exchange, but there's just one other statement that you made recently, and that is that we need to see the gap closing between the official and the parallel market, which that gap sitting at about 60% at the moment. When is that going to happen? Can you give a timing?
Well, it's difficult to give a timing about currency movements and all of that, as you probably imagine. What it is really is, what is the policy that's going to lead to that? We already have a foreign exchange policy. Now, that policy, and that's the point I've been making all along, that stabilizing that policy, ensuring that that policy works fully, is really what we're trying to get in our interactions with the central bank, which of course is independent. We're trying to get them to see that you need to implement this policy fully. Central bank, of course, has its own constraints. They're saying, hey, look, we have to be careful, but we simply can't allow the currency to float. We have to look at all of the market conditions and all of that. But really, the point we're making is that we must create the environment which will help the central bank as well. That will come from an increasing supply of dollars from oil exportation. Once we have more dollars, central bank obviously has more confidence in floating the currency. So a lot of these is,
Take your point. Let's come back to that oil production. You need to average over 2 million barrels a day to basically make your production targets for the year.
Yes.
With the situation resolved, are you going to be able to meet those production targets? Because this is the money that you're talking about. You're not going to have to revise the numbers downwards. Has anything fundamentally changed in the production cycle?
Yes, I think we'll be able to do possibly even over 2.2 million barrels a day, assuming we're able to resolve all of these problems, and we expect that we will be able to resolve the problems. What has also happened, of course, is that we used to have cash call difficulties. In the past, with our joint venture partners, there were issues of government paying its own portion of the cash calls. Now that has been resolved with the major IOCs. We now have a self-financing regime which allows for cost recovery, so that we are not going to have to be putting forward all of these cash calls. We're also paying the backlog in debts and all of that of about 5.1 billion. And we're doing that by increasing production. What the IOCs are meant to do is to increase their production in order to pay for that backlog. So we think that we have a regime now, we have a financing arrangement that allows the market, that allows oil production, allows more investment.
So you will hit the average, the 2.2 million barrels a day?
Yeah, we're reasonably confident that we will, yes.
Let's talk about the turnaround plan for the power sector specifically. Yes. The World Bank has given you their commitment. They met with the federal government end of last year. They've given you their commitment to work together to create a turnaround. Again, can you give me a little visibility on the steps that are going to be made in the power sector, specifically because privatization of the Nigerian power sector has been underway for 3 years, and now obviously it's stalled given the environment?
Maybe a bit longer than 3 years, actually. But two issues. One is the very great thing that the World Bank is working with us. And in particular, the World Bank is working on actually the market, which really is a problem. You know, the market and the liquidity in the market is really where the challenges are, aside from, you know, the other issues. But I think that the main issue is creating a market that is self-sustaining. And I think that's where the World Bank comes in. Because you have a situation where, okay, you are producing this much power, but it must be sold and it must be paid for. Those who are selling, or those who are buying must pay for it. You must pay for gas. Now, ensuring that that market is resourced, ensuring that that liquidity is there, is really where the World Bank comes in and where we're working with the World Bank. So if we're able to resolve the liquidity issues, which is important, of course, the other problems are problems of generation, transmission, especially transmission. Transmission was about 5,000 megahertz capacity, and that's for the grid. And we've now moved that up. We've increased that in terms of its simulation to about 6,500 megahertz, and up to even 7,200 megahertz at the end of last year, in terms of just the capacity for transmission, which is very crucial. But I think the most important thing is how don't forget that this is a privatized environment, that is generation and distribution are privatized. But when you privatize, of course, you expect that there will be further investments by the private sector players. A lot of the private sector players, especially the distribution companies, are highly leveraged. So there's a need for them, of course, to find fresh capital to be able to invest in metering, for example, just metering, so that they can collect their money and all of that. They can collect their tariff invoices and all that. That's an area where we need to do a lot of where we need to do a lot of work, trying to get money into the system, and we believe the World Bank partnership is going to help a great deal in that respect.
At the beginning of our conversation, you spoke about the importance of macroeconomic stability, diversification, and social inclusion. So let's touch on this diversification, because we've spent a lot of time on the power, the oil and gas environment. Agriculture is enormous for Nigeria, and potentially Nigeria can become the breadbasket of Africa. Where are we on that plan? Or if you prefer to choose a different sector that you're more diversified into, I'm open to that discussion.
Yeah, agriculture is crucial, and we're paying a great deal of attention to agriculture. As a matter of fact, agriculture is possibly the second largest contributor to our GDP, so it's big for us. Now, what we're planning to do in agriculture and what we're doing in agriculture is, first, we intend to be completely self-sufficient in rice production, in tomato, in wheat, and in rice. Just take rice, for example. Rice is an important commodity for us. There's a lot of, there's a lot of demand for rice. But more importantly, there's also a lot of foreign exchange being spent on rice importation.
Exactly. You import
yes.
a great deal of rice.
Yeah. But now, with the work that we're doing in growing rice, especially in Kebbi State, in Sokoto State, Jigawa State, in the northern rice belt, as well as in Ebonyi State in the southeast, we're seeing that there's a great deal more activity in that sector. For example, Kebbi State, which is in the north, and Lagos State just came together to do just over Christmas. Kebbi State produces large amounts of rice, and they supplied Lagos State with the rice, and they were able to work together to produce several thousand bags of rice, which was sold over the Christmas on an experimental basis. And we actually saw price of rice dropping in the markets. So those kinds of collaborations are important. But the more important narrative is that we're producing the rice aggressively, and that we're able to produce, larger acreage of rice because we have the right seedlings. We're irrigating, and we're financing that sector. There's what is called the Anchor Borrowers Program, and we're financing rice. So rice is big. Also tomatoes.
We've got about a minute left. So beyond agriculture, you've got oil and gas.
Manufacturing.
Manufacturing.
Yes.
obviously cement production
Yes.
from the Dangote Industries.
Yes.
Just a final question. Let's come back to the economic turnaround plan.
Yes.
Is it documented? Can people go in, survey it, and basically look at the timelines that you've put in place?
Yes. We will formally launch the 4-year Economic Recovery and Growth Plan in mid-February. We've already written it out, and many parts of it we're discussing, the outlines of it we're discussing, but it will be formally launched as a document in the middle of February. But our current 2017 budget is actually based on the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. By the way, we had a strategic implementation plan, which we started with in 2016. And the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan is actually a development of that strategic implementation plan. So if you look at the strategic implementation plan, you're able to see the general direction in which we're going. But the full document is to be launched in February of this year, which is next month.
Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for joining me for this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, Yemi Osinbajo, the Vice President of Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.